Well, hello, friends, and welcome once again to another episode of the 360 Experience podcast. I am your host, Tim Braheem. And if you see the smile on my face, if you're watching this on YouTube, it's because I'm excited about this conversation today with someone who I've gotten to know a little bit over the last couple of years, a neighbor of mine down in Costa Rica, Manu Ginobili. Now, if you're not familiar with who Manu Ginobili is, let me give you a little bit of a background. Manu Ginobili is a four-time NBA champion with the San Antonio Spurs. He is in the NBA Hall of Fame. He has competed in two Olympics, winning the bronze medal in one, and was the captain of the gold medal team, the only gold medal team other than the United States in probably the last 3 or 4 decades in the Olympics when he represented his native country, Argentina. So we're going to talk today about a lot of things. We're going to talk about mindset. We're going to talk about how to overcome adversity. We're going to talk about how to connect with friends in your life. And Manu is going to share a little bit about some specifics of things that he had to deal with when it came to the battle between the ears, especially later on his career. And I think that you're going to find that there's a lot of applicability to you in your life because we all have challenges that we face. We are all battling with an internal negative storyteller that is our ego and our active mind. And it is how we engage with that negative thought process that has everything to do with something that he highlights, which is joy and happiness in our life. So without further ado, I introduce you to my friend, Manu Ginobili, and the 360 Experience podcast. Manu, what's happening, bro?
Doing great, Tim. Thank you for having me.
Hey, thanks for joining me today, man. This is really a pleasure. I thought about this during the summer when we were getting to know each other better, and I was like, gosh, man, it would be really cool to have a conversation with a superstar athlete who has achieved so many things and lived a big life. And then at that night at Philip's house when we were drinking wine and we had that little conversation about game 6 and you holing up in your hotel room and how you worked through some of the anxiety and negative thought patterns. And as that conversation started to evolve, I started to realize, wow, this could be a very dynamic conversation with somebody who's had to master mindset, which is something that I think is just so valuable for everybody to hear about, regardless of what profession you're in or where you're at in your life. So let me just start off by asking this question. I mean, like, it strikes me, and I'm being presumptive here. I mean, I've never been a professional athlete, obviously, but it strikes me that you've had to really master holding yourself accountable. I mean, let's go back to the beginning, like when you first started to become an athlete, probably in your teens, I would imagine. Like, how did you create the disciplines that were necessary to really elevate your game and become better at what you do? And how did you hold yourself accountable?
Well, a lot to unpack there. I never created anything. It was just there. I don't know how, but my competitive spirit, my desire and passion for the game was there since I was born. So I always had that drive, that hunger, and I always held myself accountable, maybe too much. So that was never something that I had to work on. Actually, it was the opposite. Like with time, I had to dial down a little bit because I was losing the joy of the moment many times because of being so strict on myself, so tough on myself. So in my case, it was more about adjusting that side and not the other way around.
That's interesting. I want to unpack that a little bit further, but before I do, just orientate me for a second. So I've never even asked you this question. So when did you start playing basketball? How old were you?
Well, maybe 3 when I started dribbling, but playing competitively at 7. My 2 brothers were already players, 5 and 7 years older than me. They were pretty good. My dad was always very active in the basketball community in my city. So I never even chose basketball. I was born in a basketball family, in a basketball town. So it was part of the everyday life to go and play hoops. The thing is that I got lucky with my size, my athletic abilities, my how much I loved it and how close the courts were from my house. It was just a 100-yard walk. So I spent more time probably shooting hoops and on the court than at home early on. So it was quite easy for me to work on my craft.
So it's interesting. I mean, I don't know that we've ever talked about this before, but with my background in psychology, I'm always fascinated by people's personality structures and how they've evolved, what their origin story is associated with the personality that they have. So you referenced the fact that, it was kind of born into you that you were always
Mm-hmm.
competitive, and that if anything, you needed to dial yourself down. So obviously we have, a variety of different personality types out there, but let's just break it into just two categories for a second and say type A and type B. And a type A personality, somebody who's highly competitive, driven, self-driven, doesn't need to be pushed, is it's a gift in many ways. But with all of our gifts, there can be these blind spots. So you're referencing the blind spot of having to learn how to dial it down. Where in your life or what practices did you have to implement in your life? Because there are surely people listening to this that fall into that category, that maybe they're a workaholic, they're highly competitive, they drive themselves too hard, and then they fall out of balance in their life. So what were some of the things that you needed to do to kind of to dial that back?
Well, the first thing that I had to adjust it was the self-talk.
Hmm.
As I said before, I was very critical, very harsh on myself, and I always held myself accountable for whatever happened to the team. So as time passed and my athletic abilities and skill was decreasing because, there's somebody like you never beat time. So eventually time will get you. I had to start to befriend me in a different way that I never did before. So always, very focused, very responsible for what happened to my team. I'm very critical. And towards the end of my career, I had to forgive myself a little more, give myself a little bit of, wiggle room to make mistakes, be nice to myself, accept the reality uh, of time starting to hit me. So that was the adjustment I had to make quite late in my career. Before it was just all super driven and super focused, but it took me some time to accept that fragility, right? That I was not the same. So and it happened during exactly that year in which we played the finals in 2013. So that's why for me it was so transformative what happened to me. We always say, you're gonna hear it, and you probably said it too, about how much losses teach you and keep
Hmm.
you humble. So in that case, it was a tough one, and it's still like I have PTSD every time I think about it. But it made me so much better, so much stronger, and um, it made me like heal a little bit too, right? So great maturing experience to to having lost that season.
Okay, so I don't want to run the risk of, igniting PTSD in you, but may I ask you some questions about what happened in 2013?
All right, sure. Let's
Okay,
go.
cool. All right, cool.
Super fun.
Okay, but there's a
No, but
lesson
it's good.
here.
I digested it. I digested it already. I licked my wounds, and we were able to win afterwards. So it's kind of healed. So I'm fine.
Okay, so I want to try to tie this into everybody that's listening, watching, and have them think a little bit about maybe some challenges that they've faced in their life, where maybe they expected a lot of themselves, that they've gotten to where they've gotten in their life by constantly putting their own back against the wall and requiring excellence. And then there's this moment that you had in 2013 where you realized that, maybe you're expecting too much of yourself, and you define it as a transformative moment, which has my curiosity. So tell us a little bit about what happened in 2013. Paint the picture. You shared a little bit about this with me over a glass of
Yeah.
wine. I don't know if you remember it because you had several
Oh, I do,
glasses of
I do,
wine.
I do. I do. It was just one glass. Come on, Tim.
So tell us
What
about
happened?
2013 and what you did to work within yourself around that. I think that'd be valuable to know.
I had a very healthy career. Never had many injuries, only a few weeks That year or the year before, I started to see some tears in my, some muscle tears that had never happened to me before. I started to see that my first step was not as quick. It's all very gradual, right? It's not from one night to the other, but the, the 2012, 2013 season is about to finish and we make it to the playoffs. We have a great team. We make it to the finals and we are on a roll, and, the team relies on me the same way as, the main guys on the team. But I was starting to doubt myself. Never before in my career this happened to me, which I didn't know if I was going to be able to perform. And I was having a lot of up and downs. I'm very emotional, like very high highs and low lows. And my self-talk was not that great. And, we go to Miami for a game 6 and I struggle deeply. I mean, probably one of the worst games that I ever played at a high stage. And we almost won and we didn't. We were like, I think half a second of winning and we didn't. With me having 8 turnovers, playing terrible, and I couldn't, forgive myself of what I'd done, of not being ready, and not being mentally sharp as always. Then we lost game 7. We lost the finals. I was 35 at the time, almost 36. And then a lot of things started happening in my head, thinking, okay, I'm not there anymore. I don't have it anymore. I'm not the same. I was very critical, as I told you before. And what am I going to do with this? I mean, with this new reality, am I done? Should I just call it the day and go home and never grab a ball again? Or I'm going to be nicer to myself, appreciate that at 36, I'm still in the NBA, playing in a great team, in a city that loves me, in a team that respects me, and be nicer, accept there are not many 36-year-olds in the NBA today playing an important role. And I started to be, kinder to myself. And, that was the evolution. Before, I would have never forgiven myself for that. But at that stage, it was either fix this and find a better path, because if not, you're going to be miserable. And, that loss helped me reroute and being able to play 4 more years until 41 almost in a more pleasant way, with a better self-talk and enjoying the famous journey more, and not only the end results. So again, it was transformative, because every year at the end of the year, I was happy if we won and I wasn't happy if we lost. It was that, black or white. From that moment on, I thought, I cannot be that stupid. I mean, I'm playing in the NBA finals, wherever, like any basketball player in the whole world would love to be in your spot. And I was being miserable. I felt like shit. And I could not allow myself to do that. And I decided to slowly, try to change. It was not right away. It was not like, just like this, it happened. But in a matter of months, season and a half, I was able to, to find a right spot, a sweet spot where I was still competitive. I still was driven, but the losses were taken differently, and my performance also, and I was able to, to be happier. So I was optimizing for happiness and not performance only.
It's interesting because when I first met you, it's been a few years ago now, and we were just kind of knew each other from a distance. I'd say hi to you and see you with your family. I always perceived you as like, wow, he's like a super low key guy, and I still experience you that way energetically. Like, you're very mellow. But then we were partners in pickleball that one night. And man, I was like, oh, okay, here we go.
All right,
Here's who
yeah.
Manu really
That's the
is.
other side, the dark side of me. Yeah, I got you.
No, the dark side only if you're not your partner, which I was, which I thought it was the light side as your partner,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
you
yeah.
you were pretty impressive that day. So there's this almost like like a gas pedal, right? Like, I mean, like I'm hearing that like you were living your life for most of your life with your foot pressed down firmly on the gas and like going hard and expecting a lot of yourself. And then you had to learn this new way of being kind to yourself and to adjust that narrative internally. How did you go about that? Like, what were some of the things that you did? Did you do affirmations? Did you journal? Did you meditate? Like, because surely there are people that are listening going, hey, that's me. Like, I beat the shit out of myself all the time, and I could really benefit from learning to be a little bit kinder and gentler with myself. But it can be very antithetical, right? Because like if the thing that got you there was always holding yourself
Oh, yes.
accountable, then you have the fear of if I take my foot off the gas, I'm going to lose my edge. So how did you play with that?
I mean, it's super hard, and it's also always a dilemma that you don't know what to. I mean, I have three kids, and I don't really know if I want my kids to be as driven or as psycho as me on the court or with competition. Because you don't optimize for happiness, you optimize for performance. And if you are a coach, maybe you want kids like that. But if you are a dad, I don't know. I truly don't know. So I will just see how they are and try to, help them out and, share my experience if they become that competitive. So sadly, I got to most of the tools that are needed for those moments too late. I thought meditation, journaling was too woo-woo, and I'm skeptical of everything. So I didn't know. I was not educated enough. I learned about that a little later, towards my 2015, towards 2015, 2016. That's when I started to use more techniques, journaling and meditating and breathing exercises. Before, I just didn't know. We didn't know. I mean, it was not that common in sports to have somebody tell you, hey, try to meditate, man, calm down, breathe, visualize. And I just didn't know. So it was about reading, self-talk. When I remember that more or less at that time, I read just a simple quote. Uh, Talk to yourself the same way you talk to your best friend.
Hmm.
And I was reading that in the precise moment, if you read that quote 20 years, 10 years earlier, it just flies by. But at that point in my state, I said, of course, I mean, if I don't talk to myself like that, who's going to talk to me like that? So, little things that you read and you listen and you start tweaking little things, and then you learn about meditation, you learn about breathing, you learn about visualizing and journaling, all that. And you start maturing and growing. So the good thing is that now players, and they have so many more tools earlier that they can cope with those difficulties and those situations way earlier and be more prepared. So um, I just didn't know, so I had to struggle through it.
What were some of the things that you started to say to yourself, like in that this is kind of, I don't know if you're familiar. One of the things that I uncovered in our conversation at Philip's house that night was that you've read a lot of the same things that I've read. So you may very well have an orientation to neurolinguistic programming, and which is the reframing of repetitive thought patterns that we run in the background all the time. So what was the new narrative that you tried to insert? Like, what were some of the things that you tried to say to yourself in those moments when you were finding yourself being hard on yourself?
Just, changing from the negative to the positive, just appreciate where I was,
Hmm.
what I was doing, putting a little like distance to my everyday life, and seeing the big picture as if I was 18. And I, think, what do I want to be doing at 37, 36 when I was playing those finals, or even at 40 that I was still playing.
Hmm.
So that puts a little perspective, and you start to feel a little, better, in the sense that, you feel like, okay, yeah, I've done that. I made it. So now let me enjoy my last few years, because I don't know how long this is going to last. I know even if I'm not going to be playing until 50. So let's enjoy this ride. When I'm on the court, I'm going to be as prepared as always. But, once the negative thoughts come, you see them coming and you say, okay, not now. This is not the place for this thought. And I want these positive ones. So, there are some little tools, and and what you are reading and listening and stuff, they start to stick more because you start to be more recurrent, that you read more and more about it and you listen. So again, it was a slow process, but I think I made it, and I had quite enjoyable last few years of my career.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about Sam Harris when we were together a few weeks ago. And for those
Hmm.
that don't know who Sam Harris is, he's an absolutely brilliant Stanford professor who is a teacher on the subject matter of mindfulness and mindfulness meditation, which I think, to simplify maybe a little bit, is the becoming the observer of the thoughts and realizing that you're not the thoughts. Um, and that can create some space, right? Some separation from believing your thoughts and realizing, well, there's a great phrase. I don't know if I shared this with you, but there's a phrase that I learned in school, which is you don't have to believe everything that you think.
Hmm.
It's like we make up a lot of stories, and those stories dictate
Constantly,
and
constantly.
they dictate our energy and they dictate our behaviors. Um, so what other material did you read and are you currently reading that you find to be helpful in supporting you with um, having that separation from the thinking mind and replacing it with positive thoughts like gratitude?
It was at that stage, 2014, 15, 16, 17 is when I was reading more about it. I remember, well, of course, waking up for me,
Hmm.
it was a wake up call, actually. When I finished reading that book, or when I was reading it from a scientific mind, not from, a monk, with all respect to a monk or something. In my mindset back then, I was not ready to listen to that straight. But when somebody in the science area would tell me, okay, pay attention to this because there's a lot behind it. Then I started to read, Why Buddhism is True was one other book that, uh, made me think a lot. And I don't even remember, but there was a moment there, a year or 2 years, that I read a lot about that. But put in perspective what you said about the thoughts, that you're not your thoughts, about the ego and how dominant sometimes it is in your thought process, and how many times you do something just to feed him and not the reality of things. So um, it was, as I said before, it was a slow process. I didn't get the answers I was looking for right away. Um, but what I do know is that struggle that I mentioned to you in 2013 really made me a better person, because I started to look for answers, because that could not be who I wanted to be. I mean, I could not be feeling miserable during the NBA finals. I mean, or because of losing an NBA finals. I mean, I made it to the finals. I mean, there's, well, other 28 teams in the NBA that didn't make it, and thousands of teams and professional players that would love to be there. So it didn't make any sense. And if I would have won the finals, maybe slip through and you keep going and you go, you're still driven, and then I would have lost some important lesson in between. That is hard to say that I'm happy that I had, because it was quite painful. And but looking in the distance, it's been 11 years now. It was at that moment quite profound, and I think I'm a better person because of that.
Yeah, it brings forward the thought or the philosophy that sometimes it takes a crisis to cause an awakening, and it sounds like that's what happened for you. Your tormentor became your greatest teacher and
Hmm.
helped you see that there was another rung on the ladder in your evolution to becoming more self-actualized and gaining control of our mind and the negative thought patterns is a lifelong journey, and it's constant work. I fight the battle every day myself, but I also know that
Yes.
there's no going backwards. I mean, once you realize, like you did in 2013, that something needed to change, I mean, you know too much at that point. Now you have to do the work and
And
evolve.
it's crazy. I mean, sports is a wonderful teacher, because I carried that for basically everything else. Whatever happens, then you have that mindset, because your connections have been made in a different way, and now you use them for something else. So um, it's it was very important for me, and that's why sports are so admired and followed all over, because the lessons from sports, especially we're coming from witnessing the Olympics, and everything's more fresh, and you see the frustration or the happiness and the teamwork and the great gestures of camaraderie in sports. And so it's well, I'm fascinated by sports in its whole, not only basketball, but all the lessons that are learned through it.
How is there anywhere in your current life as well, you still work for the Spurs, and I want to get to that in a moment. But in your current life, where is that lesson showing up and benefiting you? Like in what other areas?
Well, that self-talk is everywhere sometimes. If you think you're being either a bad father or a bad, you know, friend in some way, or how you react to some things, and you see bad thoughts sometimes coming, and you say, no, and even a great thought also. If I didn't take that thought, and let's maintain some sort of equanimity and not be too high or too low, and you find your sweet spot. So I'm not I don't have a 24/7 job in which a lot of families and jobs depend on me, but I'm still part of teams in different ways, and I see ways to contribute to those teams in a different way because of the teams I've been part of, right? Successful ones, not successful ones, the ones that had tough losses or great wins. And those are lessons that I treasure, because I think in many ways I have a competitive advantage, because having gone through that early on. Sometimes people accumulate those type of experience over many decades, and I was able, because of the intensity of sports and playing at high stakes Olympics, World Cups, NBA finals, or whatever, you are able to accumulate a lot more in a shorter span of time. So very appreciative of that.
So currently with the Spurs, you, correct me if I'm wrong, you work with developing their younger players. Is that what you do currently?
Yes, I'm part of a group in the organization in which tries to help younger players develop, but off the court. So trying to give them tools to to grow and don't make the mistakes that we all made, that we didn't have that many tools. And now the NBA is getting so younger that many players don't even spend a year in college. Actually, most of the biggest talents come to the NBA with 7 months in college. So we are trying to provide them with more tools, so they are readier before we were at our age. So is part of the efforts from the organization to help this new generation of players when they come to the city, to the team.
Yeah. What are some of the challenges that I've always been fascinated. I know you're not much of a baseball fan, but I'm a big Dodger fan, and there was a Cuban-born player named Yasiel Puig who fled Cuba and came to the Dodgers and was an overnight sensation. I mean, he's a tremendous physical specimen, and this is probably about maybe 10 years ago now, and he just took LA by storm. I mean, within 3 months, he was the talk of LA. He was a superstar on the field, but then you started to see all of and he was only like 19 or 20 when he got here.
Mm-hmm.
And you started to see all of the challenges that he would face. Then ultimately he was involved in corruption and is no longer in the league. I think he may be playing in Korea somewhere, got involved in gambling scandals, got involved in
Mm-hmm.
off-field, problems. And I always felt a lot of empathy for him, because I thought, like when I was like 19 or 20, like I was so impressionable, and to have all
Crazy,
that
yeah.
money and to have women throwing themselves at him and all, too much action. So what are some of the things that you work with these players on to help prepare them to be mature adults at such a young age?
The topics are basically unlimited and as profound as you want to go. But the problematic is the one that you mentioned. Players get to the NBA at 19, 20. Right away, they start, receiving big checks, a lot of attention. They don't have the tools to manage any of those two things, like the money or the relationships or the pressure, the responsibilities. So, of course, mistakes are going to be made. We're just trying to provide them with more tools early. But social media is a huge topic. Every kid now at 19, they are with this crazy tool in their hands where it can basically ruin their careers, absorb their attention for most of the day when probably it's not the thing that you would recommend the most to do with your time. Understanding what a budget is, what a financial planner is, what estate planning is, what investing is, then how to connect to your teammates, to media, the regular media, community stuff. So it's a whole array of things that we are trying to, improve a little bit because it's something new. So, we're trying to slowly learn, improve, and see what works, what sticks, and what not, and create a program for them to thrive in this incredible world of the NBA. I mean, so many great things that we don't want them to, for the small bad things that the NBA comes with. I mean, not because of the NBA itself, but because of fame, money, the shift in relationships. A lot of things can happen. So we, trying to give them again more tools to thrive and not to suffer it. Right.
Sounds like wonderful training for you as a father of three, teenage boys.
I mean, every time I'm learning too. I'm with them. It doesn't mean like I know everything we are talking about. We are trying to get them in front of people that are educators that know what they are talking about, and I'm learning. And many of the lessons that I've collected over my career is just by making mistakes, by messing it up, by being getting screwed by a financial advisor or a bad investment or not knowing something. So again, we are trying to tell them the mistakes we've made, bring them people that know their craft and know what they're talking about, and then try to decrease the margin of error, trying to get them more prepared early on.
So, who's the toughest player that you ever faced?
Is in the NBA. There's so many, but being the same age basically as Kobe and arriving in the NBA when he was at his prime, and he was deadly. It was hard to compete against him, but it was also a privilege, right? You had to be at your best to face Kobe. So I really admire him, and I loved playing against him. I think we faced each other probably 4 times in the playoffs with mixed results. So it was always exciting and a great challenge. Kevin Durant was somebody else that is so hard to guard, and he's so good, so athletic, so tall. And so he's another one that you basically have, you don't have a shot at guarding him. So you gotta rely on your team and figure out something as a squad to limit them. So no, it's been incredible being able to compete against guys like them, and then I can keep going. Steph, Iverson, a while back. Crazy experience of having to face those guys that you watched on TV before, and at a point you gotta use all your tools to try to limit them. So it was very exciting early on to be able to play with the Kobe's, Iversons, and of this world.
It seems it's interesting. Like I hear a lot of basketball players talk about their love for Kobe and how much they admired him. What do you think it was that made him so admired by so many? I mean, he was. I mean, I don't know if it's because he has passed or if that admiration was there when he was still alive. But what do you think the reasons were that so many admired him?
I think it's the combination of skill, competitiveness, but at the same time respect for the younger generations. I mean, you keep hearing stories about him talking and mentoring players, and you see so many young players with tattoos, with 24s, 8s. His figure in legs of NBA players is just amazing. His legacy. Talk about driven. He might be the most competitive I faced, and the way his obsession for the game and to study opponents and be prepared for every game, it was like out of this world. So in my case, I barely knew him personally. We just spent, well, not much time together, but we competed against each other, and he was always a beast on the court, but always very respectful of what you did for your team. So I always appreciated that he always had kind words for me.
You guys had that connection that you both lived in Italy and
Yeah, yeah.
therefore you both speak Italian. Did he ever talk shit to you in Italian on the court?
A little bit, a little bit.
Oh, what did he say? I
But
gotta hear it.
no, it was he would say a couple words here and there, but usually it was in a friendly way. He got me a couple times bad, but once you're at that stage of competing, you know it's fine. But the fact that he spoke Italian and a little bit of Spanish too, we always had uh, a couple comments during games, but I was never the type of trash talking. I just wanted to play and focused, and I didn't want to poke the bear. So I was just trying to work on my game, focus on my thing, what I had to do, what I could do, and I never feed that trash talk rituals that are followed so much in the NBA.
What was it like to, I remember one night, oh gosh, a couple of years ago, where a bunch of us were together having dinner, and Philip actually didn't know who you were. And I had described, I mean, like in that moment, I don't know if you remember, I'm like, Philip, like this guy might be one of the like 5 to 10 famous people alive in Argentina, maybe even top three, and I was explaining to him why. And while I was explaining to him, it like occurred to me like, wow, like how it must have been such an amazing honor to win a gold medal for your country. I would have to imagine that that was just like a pinnacle moment of your life and of your career. Tell us a little bit about what that was like to lead your nation to victory in that way.
Well, I don't know when this is going to come out, but we are celebrating this week actually the 20th anniversary of that goal. So it's still fresh in my mind now because I watched a few videos and I've been sent articles that I haven't seen in many years. So it's like wine, man. It's a good wine. It gets so much better with time. I mean, now with 20 years after, you see, and it's USA, 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 Argentina, USA, 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 USA. Since the NBA started bringing players to the Olympics, I mean, we are the only ones, not USA, that to have won it. So it's incredible. And once you are there with guys that are your friends, people that I go on vacations with, and that we have that in common now, and that we knew each other for years. It's so special that it's incredible. Sometimes you think, did it really happen to us? I mean, were we in such a perfect moment in time of having combined our talents and liking each other and playing against this USA team and beating them in safe finals? Is mind blowing now with time that we went through it. is incredible. So yeah, for sure, it's something that none of us ever dreamt about. It was not a possibility when you were a kid in Argentina winning gold. It was just not a part of the equation. And having lived it and now treasure it forever is
Mm.
it's amazing, incredible experience. And once that that gold medal is on your chest, and nobody will be able to take it, whatever you do, it's fantastic. So it's really, really an amazing thing. And I was lucky enough to win NBA championships. With the Spurs, we won four. By what you feel representing your country with friends, and it's something so unique that every time you watch the Olympics, you lived it again. Some memories come, and you get the goosebumps when you hear your anthem there, uh, getting a gold medal. So very hard to explain the profound feelings, right, of achievement, of satisfaction, of doing it together. So it was awesome.
What are you guys doing to celebrate? That's an interesting thing. 20 years later, you guys doing something special?
That was crazy because I mean, this year we're going to try to get back together for the first time since that night.
Oh, wow.
Because usually the Olympics are, that year was a little later. So we won gold on August 28th, 2004, and the season was approaching. So most of the guys were in different teams in Europe, and we were playing the Olympics in Greece. So instead of flying from Greece, from Athens to Argentina, and then having to go back to Spain, Italy, or other countries, we just stayed in Europe. I flew to San Antonio. No, actually, I went to Italy for a few days with my wife. So we never got back together. So there was not a celebration. It was just that night. We
Mm.
went out, we ate, we drank, we hugged each other, we cried, we all that. But that was it. We never again spent time together. So this year we're going to do a trip, and I'm quite excited about it.
That's fantastic. We talked about this a few weeks ago about like how you try to go on a couple of trips a year with just your guy friends. Tell us a little bit about that. I think that's a really important thing. I think that when people get so absorbed in their life, with their career, with their family, kind of the first thing to go is that connection with that tribe of guy friends in the case of a man and girlfriends in the case of a woman. Tell me a little bit
Mhm.
about your philosophies on the importance of that.
Well, I left Argentina quite young, or I started to be a pro quite young. So I started to, because of that and my responsibilities and taking care of my body and always being, with this mindset, I left aside a lot of things that most of the 20-year-olds in this world do until, they're 26, 28. I didn't live with them that part. So for me, it was always a priority in the off seasons to go back to Argentina, spend time with my friends. They're my high school friends, mostly, to spend quality time with them, right? But what we realized is that when we are in our towns, and we guys are working and kids are in school, and you don't have the same type of connection that when you are on a trip, right? And without, thinking about your job 24/7, or having to take your kid to basketball, to English, to whatever, you are in a
Mhm.
different mindset. So we tried every year to go somewhere for 6, 7 days in which we spend time together. We rent a big house and we eat together, breakfast, lunch, dinner, we talk, we walk, we do exercise, whatever. But I feel like that week together is deeper, and you connect better than, you can be months in the same city at the same time, but, you just get together one night a week or so. So I found I found that trips, friends trips, are very you connect in a different way. So I try to do that with my high school buddies, also with a few Spurs buddies if we can. It's quite hard to get together, and with this Argentinian national team, we've done a few, never all 12, but we've done a few too. And I feel like the conversations are completely different once you gain that routine, that uh, thing of being all day together. So I try to incentivize that because I take so much value. I believe that connections are so important. And sometimes we pay too much time to work, to money, but we are social creatures. We need that deep connection, that profound conversation and listening to each other. So I try to do that as much as much as possible.
Yeah, I'm glad I asked that question because I think your answer is very important for everyone to hear. I mean, this is very akin to what I do for a living when I do my retreats. So, we have 12 clients that come down to the peninsula in Costa Rica every year. Our next retreat is in November, and we live together. I mean, we're up at 7 in the morning, and we go to bed at 9:30 at night. And yes, we are working. Yes, it is associated with the development of your business and the development of you as a human being. But what is also a part of that equation, well, the way it started was the first one I did was 15 years ago, and it was me and four guys. And at the end of that week, I mean, these were four guys that I didn't know, but at the end of that week, like
Mhm.
literally grown men were crying and giving each other hugs saying, I'm going to miss you. And because of the level of depth, to your point, that we were able to connect in that extended saturated period of time. And that's when I realized after a while, like this, everybody's like, why does this have to end? So that's why we continued it. And that's why we still have this group and it evolves. But I think it's super noteworthy. You're right. Like it's very different than meeting for lunch, once a month, or a dinner with your spouses once a month. I mean, yeah, that's still nice, but
Yeah, it's nice too. It's valuable too to sit with somebody you care about and talk for an hour or two. But when you go on a trip and you are 12, 14 hours together, and you leave, you make an effort, a deliberate effort to leave devices aside and distractions and just connect and talk and learn about their everyday lives or what's going on or what they're bothering them and what they're excited about, what's coming. You connect in a different way. It's hard not to love somebody when you know their story, right?
Mhm.
When you their reasons and their history. So I also, there's something that I learned from the game, from knowing the story of your teammates and knowing what they are about, what they care about, what their families are like, and I feel like it's very valuable to connect, to get a group of friends, teammates, or office guys to working for the same goal.
That's fantastic. I'm really glad that we went there. I want to wrap this conversation by talking about somebody who I've always been curious about, who I know that you have a relationship, which is Pop. You happen to play for one of the greatest coaches in the history of any sport. And
Hmm.
I've always been intrigued by him, even though I wasn't a Spurs fan. I watch his interviews. I'm inspired by the things that he says. He
It's
strikes
long
me.
forms interviews.
Yes, he's got a lot to say. But he strikes me as being an amazing teacher, not just of sport, but of life. And I guess I would want to ask you, what have you learned from him that's made your life more enriched and more enhanced?
Well, first of all, gotta clarify that he doesn't like people talking about him a lot, so
Ah,
I'll keep
okay.
my answers short.
Okay.
But for sure, he's a teacher. Of course, he was successful in X's and O's and trying to tactically overcome some difficulties. But what we all take away is, the person and the life lessons. So I was very lucky to have played for him 16 years. So I know him very well. And and I said it in every, like, on the jersey retirement night. It's not about the wins. It's about the lessons and the routines, right? The everyday, how he tries to connect, and how it's not about, it's no bullshit. Is what you see. I mean, is real, and he showed me the way that you can only lead with honesty, with being who you are. You cannot try to lead a team now in the NBA trying to be Pop because it worked, and because he's been there 30 years. So you can lead trying to be Phil Jackson, or you got to lead your way. Because if you're not honest and you are not who you are, people figure it out. They know you're bullshit. You are an imposter, and you're out. So with him is that he's a special human being. He cares. He's very driven, very competitive, and he will do everything he can to make you succeed and help you out in your career. So he creates a sort of trust and confidence under what he says and tries to execute is for the common good, that you end up following. Is convincing.
It's really important what you said there, as it relates to being authentic. I don't think people realize, or a lot of people don't realize, how much we pick up on the energetic frequency of other human beings. And when somebody is trying to be a falsified version of themselves and trying to posture themselves a certain way, that emits an energetic frequency that creates distrust, versus when you can feel, a shorter way of saying this, you can feel when someone is being real and when they're being authentic, and you're drawn to people like that, and you want to be led by them because you can put your guard down and trust them because you can feel their authenticity. And I think that is a hallmark of leadership, not just on a sports team, but in the home, in the workplace. And I think that's a wonderful answer as it relates to what true leadership is about, is being honest, being authentic, being vulnerable, and being real. And that builds trust and allows for people to follow, because we don't want to follow people we don't trust. So
No doubt, no doubt.
I want to take you back with the final question to you're 18 years old, and you get to have, as a 44, you're 44, right? Right.
Yes.
Okay.
Let's say 44.
Okay. Okay. Cool. I'll check with your
I
wife.
love I love the 44. Thank you, Tim. I love you too, man.
Okay. So as a 43-year-old man, you get to have a conversation with your 18-year-old self right now. And he's 18. If you can remember back to where he was at that time, what advice would you give him?
I think the usual is something that we talked about early on. Chill, keep your head your head up, work your ass off, still be competitive, but calm down a notch. It's gonna be all right. Optimize a little bit more for happiness than performance. And at 18, I was too focused on being the best version of myself. So I was in a little bit of a individual bubble, and I cared less about the well-being of my teammates and knowing the stories of my teammates. And I think that's something I kind of regret. I learned that kind of later in my career, and I think I lost on a little bit on a lot of connection with teammates, because being so focused on the competition, my individual challenge, and trying to get better, how to overcome this issue that I didn't at the beginning, especially at 18, care that much about the team. I was lucky enough to have great coaches and great leaders that show me the importance of caring about your teammates and doing the little things, not only the showy things to get headlines. But at 18, I needed to hear it. And I think I could have gone that way. Just calm down, enjoy yourself, and enjoy relationships, learn about your teammates, help them be better. That's what I lacked back then, and I only learned towards the end.
What a beautiful answer, which really encapsulates the entirety of our conversation and certainly applies to everyone who's listening. I mean, what areas of your life are you out of balance and maybe neglecting to stay connected to other people in your life, because that's the essence of what life is about. And how can you find that equilibrium between achievement and competitiveness and holding yourself responsible and accountable to your goals and aspirations, and yet not compromising love and presence and connection with others. Manu, thank you,
Mhm.
man, so much. Such an honor. Can't wait to see you again here in a few months, I hope. Hope
No.
you and Mani and the kids are doing great.
Thank you very much for having me, Tim. It was a fun conversation, and I hope you guys listening got something out of it. So
I'm
looking
sure they
forward to
did,
see
bro.
you. Okay,
Okay,
thanks.
okay. Grazie,
You
amico.
too.